here's one of the legs for the table. I'm gonna go over the layout for this leg here. So it's gonna have a taper on the two inside edges, and I start that taper 4.5 inches down. So this mark is 4.5 inches from the top of the leg. And my leg is 2 3/4 of an inch wide. And the taper, it tapers down to 2 3/8 of an inch. So I came down on this end, marked 2 3/8 of an inch from the outside edge. And then I just very simply connected those 2 points. And that gives me this part right here, shows what I'm removing. And then what I did, just made a really quick, simple jig with some scrap material. So just took a piece with 2 parallel edges, and I also transferred that 2 3/8 of an inch mark down the bottom of the leg on the underside here. And I line this up. So I line that up with the edge of the plywood. And I just put a couple stop blocks there, so that's always referenced. So basically at the very bottom here, this is overhanging this jig 2 3/8 of an inch. And then at the top, I just very simply at 4.5 inches, made sure that this is where the leg is now flush. So it's overhanging it all the way into right here, and then it's flush. And then at this point, this part of the leg is slightly set back from the edge of the plywood. And now I'm gonna run this on my bandsaw and cut this next, and I'll show you that process. The next part of this project is assembling the base. So this is a mock-up of the base here, or one part of the base. So this is a corner post, and then this is the 2 skirt boards. So this one represents the short skirt board that goes across the width of the table, and then this one's the long skirt board. And I have those cut already, so here's the 2 long skirt boards and the 2 short ones. So I do go ahead and label everything just to try to eliminate any confusion when it comes time to make all these mortises for the base assembly. So I label my underside, and then I also label the inside because those are going to be my reference faces. And I do that on all 4 pieces. So on this mock-up here, actually, before I get to this, let's talk about this, the hardware. So the hardware is 201349. That's this piece. And this is the one that's gonna actually go into the corner post. And then you have 201350, and that's this piece. And this is going to essentially connect the corner post with the skirt board, and this is 201351. So it's 349, 350, 351. And this goes into the skirt board. And essentially what this does, this set screw here tightens down, and into this piece and holds it nice and tight. So if I take this apart, show you what it looks like here. So this is on the inside face of the long skirt board, and this receives this piece right here. And then if you look on the end of it, this part accepts this piece right here. And we can see that right here. So I'll unthread this for a moment. Okay, and this piece right here, this is the one that goes in the corner post. So as you hammer this in, it'll hold very tight, but what happens is when you thread this in here, it'll expand, it'll push these two parts away from each other and dig them into the wood. They'll drive into the wood and they'll really hold tight. So this just goes right here. And what you have to just ensure is when you are turning that, this part with the kind of recess here, the concave part, that just has to be facing the inside. So right now that's facing the inside. And so if you slide this on, so if we slide that on right here, you can see very loose right now. But we'll tighten this set screw. And once you crank down, you can see that's holding. So that's not going anywhere. Very difficult to even turn it or twist it. So this will allow the base to lay flat and disassemble. But also you can see that it holds really, really tight here. I've been very happy with this connector system. So that's the long skirt. And the way I set it up, it'll leave a slight inset. It'll be slightly inset from the front edge, or I should say the outside edges of the corner post. And then on the short skirt boards will actually just get glued. So I don't put connectors on everything. On the short skirt boards, just a couple tenons, and that just will get clamped and glued, and that'll still allow all this to lay flat for transportation and shipping. So that's it. So I'll go over how you know where to make all of these mortises, and that'll be the next step here. Before we get started, I'll just show you how I lay everything out to try to eliminate any chance of making a mistake when I'm doing my mortising. So my corner posts, then just the short skirt boards, and then there's the long skirt boards. And then you can kind of see here, anywhere that there could be some confusion about where a mortise would go, I put an X. Same on the, with the skirt boards, the corner posts, and then just label. So this is long 1, L1, and that's S1, and then the same thing will correspond here. That's the long skirt board that'll line up with this post, and so that gets L1. And there's the short skirt board that lines up with that post, so that gets S1, and then S2, S2, L2, L2, and then just continues around. Those get the 3s, and those get the 4s. I'm going to create this mortise first, which is the mortise on the end of the long skirt board. So to do that, I'm going to be referencing my fence, my joiner fence, off of the inside face. So I'm going to reference it off of this face, and then I'm going to align the second tab. So in this case, it'll be the right side here. I'm going to align this tab right here with the underside of the skirt board, or if you want to think of it as the top. So I'm going to align it with right here, this edge. So this is the top edge. This would go on the underside of the tabletop. So again, the fence will go off of the face, the tab will go off of the top of the skirt board, and that's going to create this mortise. So you do need the 14mm router bit, and you can see this here. This is going to be down 20mm, which would be to the center line. So I'm going to set my fence at 20mm, and then we're going to be plunging 50mm. Just to review, my height setting is 20mm. Plunge depth is 50mm. I'm on the tight setting, and I have the 14mm bit. And I'm going to be, again, using the second tab right here. And I'm going to be aligning that with my top edge. This is the top edge of the skirt board, which will butt up to the underside of the table. And then my fence is going to reference off the inside face. Okay, so we just made this mortise in the end of the long skirt board, and I'll go ahead and do this now on the other three ends of the skirt boards, and then we'll come back after that and we'll create this mortise. So this is the other end of that same skirt board. So now I had to rotate the skirt board, and this is now my top of the skirt board, which will butt up to the underside of the table. And so now I'm going to use the second tab on the left side here as my reference. Now we're going to create this mortise. And this is from the end of the board, 40mm to the center line, and then it's plunged 30mm deep. So change our settings here to 40 and 30mm for the plunge depth. And then once again, we'll reference the second tab off of the top of the board, top of the skirt board, which again butts up to the underside of the table. And then the fence will reference off of the end grain here, off of the end of the skirt board. Both mortises are complete. Just to review, you always reference off of the top edge of the skirt board, which butts up to the underside of the table. And I like using the tabs because it ensures these distances are identical because they have to align. And then you're going to also reference off of the inside face for your end grain, and vice versa. You're going to reference off the end grain for this inside face mortise. And you might be wondering, why is this not centered? Well, just looking ahead a little bit, I'm going to use these clips here, these Z clips, to secure the underside of the table to the skirt board. So it's going to go something like this, and there's going to be a dado slot. There's going to be a dado put in here, or a slot, a groove, however you want to think of it, that'll run along this inside edge of the skirt board. And I just want to ensure that these don't interfere with each other. So that's why this is offset from center, and it's a little bit closer to the bottom of the skirt board. Next, we have to create this mortise in the corner post. And this is the top of the corner post. So this distance, we're going to use the second tab stop as a reference point again. And that'll ensure that this distance from the top, which touches the underside of the tabletop, is identical to what we did here. So again, these distances we'll reference off of the top edge of the skirt board with the second tab to get our distance here. And we're going to reference off the top of the corner post, so all of these will be aligned. And then we're going to plunge 25 millimeters deep, and we're going to reference our fence on the outside of the corner post. And the height setting will be 30 millimeters. So we'll be 30 millimeters to the center line here, 25 millimeters deep, and we're going to reference the tab off of the top of the corner post. So this corner post right here is laying on its side. Again, I have an X here just so I ensure I don't make a mistake and put a mortise there. I have my long side. This is the tapered side for the long edge. And so I know my mortise has to go in here. So basically what we're looking at, it would look like this if we turned it to a line. So before we get started, just to show it again, 30 millimeters for the height, 25 millimeters for the plunge depth, and my second tab stop, going to reference off the top edge of my corner post. So I'm aligned there, and we can plunge. Next, on the short skirt boards, we're going to be placing some dominoes, and again we're going to reference off of the top edge of the skirt board, which will meet the underside of the tabletop, and then we're going to be referencing as well off of the inside face here. So very similar to the long skirt boards, our references are going to be the top edge of the skirt board and the inside face. And we're just going to use the second tab again to reference off of the top edge, and we're going to make two different mortises here, one at 10 millimeters down, so that's the center line of this one, and then this center line is at 30 millimeters. And these are now, I switched over to my 8 millimeter mortiser, my 8 millimeter bit, and I'll use an 8 millimeter by 50 millimeter tenon. So looking at the setup, we're gonna do this one first. So again, the height is just 10 for that first one, and then plunge depth is 25. And I'm going to use the second tab again right here on the left side. Okay, to finish, we need to put mortises in the corner post, and we're going to put those on the face that corresponds with the short skirt board. And we're going to, as we've been doing, reference off the top edge with our second tab. And just like when we did the corner posts for the long skirt board, our fence is going to reference off of the outside face here. And we're going to be making mortises 20 millimeters and 40 millimeters down. So those will be the center lines, 20 and 40. And this will give us, once we're done with that, this will give us a 1/4 inch reveal, which will match the reveal on the long skirt board. My cross braces for the base are cut, and these are going to be adding additional support to the base, and these are going to get the Festool connector system as well. These short cross braces are going to get these two mortises. So just like I did with the long skirt boards, I'm going to be treating these the exact same way. So they're going to get a mortise on the end and on one of the faces, and then the long skirt board is going to receive this mortise. So the reason this is going in the skirt board, just like I did on the corner post, so the reason this part is going to go into the skirt board is this only requires a 25mm plunge depth, and my skirt board is 1 3/4 of an inch thick, so that'll be okay. That obviously won't go through that. But this requires a 50mm plunge depth, so this has to go in here from the end grain, because at 50mm that's almost 2 inches, and that would go through the skirt board. So that's the next step here, creating all these mortises in these short cross braces and the long skirt board. Next step here with the base is to attach these Z clips and also get the layout for these 4 bolts. So with the Z clips, they're on all 4 sides here, and basically they're going to allow the table to contract and expand while also holding the skirt board tight to the tabletop. And I just like to place them close to the corners, and then basically just space them evenly along the long edge after that. And then on the ends, I just like to make sure that these are not going to land on a domino tenon. So these ones on the ends are actually offset from the center, and then this one in the middle is actually centered because there's not a tenon there. So that's gonna be the next step. All of this is gonna have threaded inserts in the tabletop and attached with bolts. So for these Z-clips, this slot here, the distance from the top of the skirt board, or basically the tabletop, to the start of the groove is supposed to be 7/16 or 28/64. I actually make it a little bit bigger. So I make this distance a little bit longer, which is, I make it 29/64. And the reason is, if you can see this, when I go to slide this in, it doesn't slide smoothly. And I like that because I want this distance a little bit taller, so there's more tension that this pulls down more on the skirt board to the tabletop. And not so much that it won't allow it to move, but it just gives that little extra pull to help tighten this up and make sure it's a nice snug fit. Also with these Z-clips, they're not intended to come with threaded inserts. They just have regular screws, but I don't like that because if you keep taking this in and out with a screw, you're only gonna be able to do it so many times before you strip the wood. So I'm gonna use 1/4 bolts. And so these holes right here are gonna need widen to accommodate that, to accommodate a 1/4 inch wide bolt.